Recording. All right, so welcome everyone to this Skill Builder workshop on databases for statistical data. So what we're going to cover today is we're going to be talking about first types of data sources. There's lots of different types out there. I'm just going to mention 3 different types to kind of set up your expectation for what you might find in these different tools. And then I wanted to make sure you know what we have in terms of our packages at the library. And then finally, we'll talk a little bit about finding additional sources. So, and we'll do some Q&A at the end. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about is the types of data sources. You can Google lots of different definitions for what types of data sources are out there. This is how I interpreted it based off of the kind of help that I'm usually giving people. Usually I'm either having people needing to find a single fact or a table of information. And usually that's very constrained to one time period. So it might be something that looks like the quick facts from the Census Bureau. So you can see that I can download this into a table. It's got little pieces that I can look at. It's got a set time frame, though I can probably change that time frame. But usually I'm looking at a set of information that it's providing to me based off of just some factors that I've looked for. So this is useful for when you want to put it into a slide presentation or you just need some facts to back up your data. So that's one of the types of things. You can also see that at something like the Pew Research Center. It would be a graph that would be useful to you for understanding a more social topic. What's hard about some of these is that you have to really understand how they pulled the data together. And unless you're using it just wholesale, this is what they presented to you, then it's going to be, you'll have to probably enter the data yourself into another tool to do more of your manipulation. So really, these kind of sets of data is basically just you trying to find one thing, and it's usually easy to download or utilize because it's just already packaged the way that it should look. And then there's time series, and we'll see that there are tools for time series data in things like the Census Bureau. But one of the good examples of a time series data set is the World Bank World Development Indicators. These are things where a time series is essentially, you get to choose your time frame. So it has to fit within the time frame of the database, what they have in terms of information, but then they have variables, and those variables could be individual countries or some other topic, and then you have series that you're able to add into it. So these series you can see are subject-based. We're looking at electricity. If we wanted to see other things that they have in here, we can see that they have it about national accounts. So this one's a very economic-focused database. We can see education. And so we get to choose what we want to put into our chart and customize it to the countries that we're interested in and the type of data series that we're interested in gathering information on. So that's another type that you might come across. And then the final type, students in the undergraduate area usually don't need this quite as much. Same with a lot of master's students don't need this kind of set. But actually, our students do use data sets pretty extensively, more than my experience at some other schools. But basically what those are is it's going to be a large set of data that you can't just download into a spreadsheet usually. It might be able to be downloaded into a spreadsheet, but it's so large and you want all of it. I call it kind of a data dump, but you want everything about it, and you probably want to take one variable and then know everything else that they have. So a good example of this is when I would be working with the College of Business over at Georgia State. They had Wharton's Research Data Service, and there was a tool in here that we had that would let me identify the stock price for all the companies on the stock market for a given time period. And so that was too much for any spreadsheet to handle, but using a statistical data tool, I would be able to manipulate that data. Some of the other ones that you can see here are ISPRI. That's one that we don't have access to, but it's a really cool data set. Basically, when professors and researchers create their studies, sometimes they're using studies that have been done by the government, which is pretty much what we have access to, but they might have created their own data set through a survey or some other methodology. And this tool lets you find those. We don't have a subscription to it, so we aren't able to download some of those, but it is an interesting tool if you can get access to it, so that you can find out who might be talking about your topic. I think I did something with somebody related to, gosh, I can't remember. I don't remember. It was more about preferences, and they were able to go down to Georgia State and use one of the visitor computers there and get access to this data. So that's another type of tool. It's just like big, huge data dump of a study that somebody might have done. And a final one that I wanted to mention was iPoems. I don't know if anybody has come across iPoems before, but this is what a lot of the econ students use. It's recommended by the econ department. Basically, it's a lot of the same kind of data that we saw at the Census Bureau and other government entities, but it lets you download it as a huge set, and then you can manipulate it in Stata or SPSS, something like that. So I just wanted to clarify that these are the types of data that are out there, usually available through libraries or freely available through websites. There are definitely other kinds of data sets around, but those are the ones that I'm most familiar with. And the ones that we'll probably focus, our tools really focus in on are these two. So actually, our tools pretty much focus in on this, things that you can download that are more set. And then there's free web-based tools that you can usually get that are more time series. So we'll come back to those if you have more interest in knowing about individual areas. The thing is with data is that every area is unique. There's so much data out there that we really need to know what you're looking for and then be able to figure out who might be producing that data for you. So let me close a few tabs real quick before I move on. So the next thing that I wanted to do is just talk to you about the statistical databases that we have here at Agnes Scott. So you can see that I'm in our databases A to Z list, and I changed database type to statistics and data sets. So we don't have a large set of databases. We have, this is more economic country related information. It's predominantly reports with tables that you can download. I've honestly never really used this CauseWeb, so I'm not really positive what it does. It does have some data sets in it. And then finally at the bottom, it's got the United Nations Comtrade database. That's a free tool. And I don't see it as super relevant to most of the things that our students are doing unless they're very interested in the nuances of trade. But I want to show you how to get here. So I'm going to stop doing the presentation through the slides and just do kind of a demo. Any questions so far, though, before we move on? I am sure you can hear my dog licking things off the floor, so apologize for all the noise that's happening in the background here. Okay, so how I would get to those sets of those databases is you can either use this databases A to Z link at the top of the library homepage. It's also available right underneath this search box. So Discover is not going to be useful to you at all for finding data, except for if you want to find articles that might mention a source that you want to then track down. So yeah, just don't worry about Discover. Hold on. Lily. Sorry, she's eating the cat food. So she just knows that I'm distracted right now. So then, yeah, so you either want to use the databases A to Z here or databases A to Z here. I'm going to go ahead and use it from below just so you can see that it does go into our full list of databases that has 284 databases. And if I go here to by type, you can see that you can narrow it down to the statistics. And that's when we get to that list I was showing you. And I'm just going to go through these in order and tell you how I utilize them. So if you are somebody who is really interested in consumer related data in industry or business, Statista is really great. In fact, you might have come across this. Let me just go to Google and do a search for Zoom industry statistics. I honestly didn't try this before, but usually it's one of those things that will come up when you're looking through a Google search. So here you can see that Statista is here. And if you go in through this link, it's not going to recognize you as somebody who has an account through Agnes Scott, and so there's going to be less functionality that you can do. So it's better to go ahead and go through our tool, and it'll look like this. And I can do that same search for a company or a trend. And so I'm just going to do Zoom. It doesn't do company data. We don't subscribe to that part, meaning that they have access to company reports from Dun & Bradstreet, but we don't have that in our collection. But what you can see is you can see that there's a lot of different statistics that it's giving you. It's very focused on data, not articles, just what kind of data is available. And you might see things like, oh, it's got the number of Zoom downloads in France. I wish I knew that for the United States. So what you can do is go over here and use the filters to narrow down to a country that you might be specifically interested in. So if I scroll down to get to the United States, I can do the United States. I can add additional countries in there so I can see multiple reports, and then just refresh the screen. So here now we're seeing more things that would be related to the United States. And here's an interesting one: communication tools used during the coronavirus pandemic for remote work. It was just doing a keyword search for the word Zoom. So this is not just on Zoom, but it is giving me some details that will include Zoom in the link. And so here's what the chart looks like. And it tells you where it came from. So if we go down here, you can see that it is from Staffing Hub. So over there, it tells you what your source is. And it provides a link to that website. So if you want to explore more about what they have, then you can do that. They have a report. I don't know if this is free or not, but sometimes the websites have reports for free that would be useful. That's what it looks like it's doing. It's just pulling from there and giving you a more organized view of the web and the resources that are out there. What I also love is that you can insert it into a PowerPoint presentation or download into an Excel file. So I can click on this, and let's open this up. I'm going to stop sharing for just a second so I can show you the spreadsheet that comes up. So go ahead and share my entire screen. Looks like that's going to take a moment for it to pop up. It's just bouncing up and down. So while we're waiting for that, I'll just kind of continue going through this. Any searches that you would think about that you're interested in related to consumer-related products or industries. I've used this one in terms of opioid epidemics. So looking at pharmaceutical drug prices for opioid epidemics in different countries, market shares, brand value, things like that. So like I said, it's going to be much more business focused. And here you can see the chart that's coming up. You'll also see other charts that I've potentially created in the past couple of weeks. So this is the front page, and then it gives us the data. So this wasn't super important, but it's helpful to be able to have something put into a spreadsheet for you if you have more than a couple of data points to look at. So that's one of the features that you have here, is just easy way to share. And so this is a fun tool to play around with. One other thing that we can search for is college online. I didn't try this search earlier, but you can see that there's things that relate to issues that we're more concerned about. There's going to be a delay potentially in when the data was produced. So there might be studies out there already that are looking at the online experience for college students that are not appearing here. But this gives us a start. And some of these have reports in it. So if we want to look at the status of e-learning and digital education, you'll be able to access a full report. It's 64 pages, and you can see the different types of data that might be listed in there. So that's this tool, and many of the other ones kind of function just like this. Like I said, this is a fun one to play with. So the next one that I wanted to try to cover, if there's anybody have questions about Statista? Okay, just checking in. Before I go to let me go to Statistical Insight. Statistical Abstract is honestly one of my favorite tools, but it's also more for me of a finding aid. And Statistical Insight is very much more like Statista, but with access to more federal government kind of sources. So anything that's produced by the federal government since 1999 is more likely to be in here. We don't have the full version of this tool. So if we go to the content coverage chart, you can see that it's really just showing 1999 to the present. There are other versions of this that expand out into international, more state level data sources. And this one will still have some of that, but it's just not the full version of it. So it's the same kind of thing as Statista, but it's a little less consumer focused, a lot more on economic indicators, more likely. And you can see that if you're interested in just getting inspired to know some statistics that are important to people at this moment, these are some topics that have been in the news. So the searching works very similar. I probably wouldn't go ahead and search for something like Zoom in here. Instead, I was going to look at, I was interested in this identity theft one. So you can just keyword search. The keyword searching is going to look at a limited number of fields, not find the individual data in each of the data sets. To do that, you'd have to go to advanced search. And you would change your field to all fields, including the full text. You can narrow it down to the title. You can narrow by a source. So if you do know there's a source that you want to find more about from a particular, see what they produce from a particular time period, you can do that. And they have these great index terms as well that can help you browse through what you're looking for. So if I'm interested in education, I can see the different types of topics that I can look at for finding education. And so you can see education retention rates, dropout rates, different types of topics that might be interesting to you if you're just not sure where you're going to go and what it would be called. But I'm going to start with the basic search and go to identity theft, just because I was really interested in that one. I had a problem with that earlier last year. And I feel like it gives us a good overview of what you might find if you just did a keyword search. First off, as you saw in the other database, almost every single database that we come across now has ways that you can filter your results. So whether it's looking at the types of sources, if I wanted to see things from specific organizations like the Pew Research Trust, this is a way that I can narrow my focus thinking about who cares about this topic and what they might be saying. So of the federal government agencies, we see the most information under Trade Commission, which is interesting. I'd probably want to look into that more. And then it does seem like Office of Justice and Federal Bureau of Investigation, they're going to have a lot of information to share as well. So you could narrow to those if you want. You can decide that you want to see data by city, by county, by MSA. You can also decide that you want things broken down in a certain way, so that you can see how this tool can be really helpful for helping you get to the type of information you need. You can find a lot of these pieces of information on the web, but this is one seamless tool that you can use that's just looking for making sure that there's data available, whereas a general web search, you can't designate that you're, well, you can actually designate that you're looking for an Excel file, but it doesn't come out the same. And then finally, subject. So you can see how your topic breaks down in terms of subject. And you can narrow by date range. And remember I said it was 99 to the present. And then over here, if I click on this link here, you can see once we go into the record that it includes the abstract, and then it gives us all the tables that we could look at that relate to this work. So this is the full document, the consumer fraud theft complaint data, and then down here we see each of the different data sets or data tables, and we can download those tables just like we could in the last one. So this would go into Excel, And so if I am looking at this one, this is what it looks like on the screen, and I can download it to Excel from here or from the previous one, or I can go to the full report and see it in context. So that's another benefit, is that you can narrow your search to just finding things that have a table about what you're looking for. It also searches reports. And so whenever you are looking at the results and it says, see how it says that there's 441 PDFs, there's 828 tables. If I just click on the PDF and there are some that don't have the tables listed, which is the one that we're looking at does that, then it's still going to give me access to the tables. It's just letting me know that this is a full report. And not all the tables that I'm interested in might appear here. But if I go to tables, you can see that I'm going into individual reports. So here's the insurance fact book. And when I click on this, it takes me into that table. But again, I can still click the full report and find information. So it's just a really robust way that you can search for information. You're able to download in both of these databases the tables that you find. And so it's just quick and fast. The other thing that's always important is recognizing the source that you get it from. Because if we go to something like the Insurance Information Institute, we just go ahead and do a Google search for that. Then once we get to their page, we can explore more. Once you figure out this is a data set that is really useful for me, you can go try to find more information about it on their page, and they might have additional data sets that would be useful. So usually you have to skim through the page, locate where they might have their data listed, determine if they're requiring that it be something that you have to have an account for. This is just another way that you can expand out your search. So, and see different ways of searching. So any questions about Statistical Insight? It's definitely a really useful tool.
I have a question that's general, which is, and it gets to, I thought you might be about to say something about it when you talked about checking sources. This is really interesting, and I have not, I haven't accessed databases like this before, so it's a really interesting concept for me to think about, especially for helping students with. But so how are the databases vetted? I mean, I would think that anything that, I would imagine that any of the databases that Agnes Scott College has a subscription to is a credible database, but what can you say about that sort of evaluation?
Yeah, so how we choose it, or how the data
how they are, or what to look for, because I mean, I can imagine there are databases that are not very credible. So how do you tell the difference?
So right off the bat, we don't really have a great way to do it. It's the same way as evaluating any source. You don't ever start a source until you know who you're working with. Or that you've gotten a good recommendation from somebody. So since it's on the library list, you can guarantee that we've looked at it before, and or at least like I said, I don't know this one, but I know that this has been recommended to us. Liz was the one that put it on there. So I'm gonna trust that it's good.
Right, I would do the same. I would say, okay, if it's on Agnes Scott, then I trust it. But other than that, is there something we should pay attention to?
Yeah, so what I end up doing when I have to get them here, like Statista, I wasn't really positive that that was a good source for a while, because I've been working with business students and they keep finding the free versions, and I'm like, I worked in industry and I mean, obviously 20 years ago they didn't have that tool, but I know that name recognition is really important. So to verify that that wasn't just kind of like a Wikipedia type thing, and to make sure that it was a more legitimate source, I had to do some research on reviews. So librarians are always reviewing things, so that we have a few magazines like Choice, which we have a subscription to it through our databases. So I go into something like Discover and I do a search for the source and see if anybody's citing it. If
Okay.
anybody's mentioning that they've used it, because if nobody's mentioning that they used it, then I probably don't think that it's relevant. And I'll do the same thing with a Google search. I try to see who is mentioning this, because that was such a big thing for us in business when I worked for the consulting firm. There were places that you could get stock prices from and investment reports, and they were freely available on the web, but nobody liked them. They didn't like that quality of the information. And so if you gave it to a partner, they would just not feel like that was trustworthy enough. So name recognition matters, and somebody's going to mention it and give you the overview of how it's useful to them. So yeah, I wouldn't use any source before vetting it, especially with those big data sets, because you don't know what you're downloading. So the only other one that I was going to tell you guys about was Statistical Abstracts of the United States. And this is one of the first tools that I ever learned about. This has been around for decades. It's was a book that was produced that really highlights the major statistics that are produced in the United States. So they had the same set of same list table of contents for each year. And so what's most useful about it is that when you figure out the area that you want to look into, so I'm going to go into science and technology now, you can see the breakdown of, it goes in order essentially. Each table builds, and so you'll start to learn different segments, but you can also narrow over here based off of some of the keywords that they're providing. But usually I just kind of browse through it because I'm used to the paper version. But what I like about it, and you can search too. You can see up here that you can search. So if I had something in mind, then I could search here. So maybe let's look at women and science. And so you can see that these tables did fall into my science area. I just had to go a little bit further in. And so now I can look at this table here, science and engineering degrees, and you'll see that it has pulled the data all together. It's giving me a designated time period. I don't think that sometimes there's options to download into an Excel spreadsheet. So up here you can see that. So that can be useful. But really what I'm doing here is I want to know who put that out. So is this the data I want? Yes. Do I want something else that's like it? Yes. So who produces it? The National Center for Educational Statistics. And what do they call this? They call it, oh, no, that's not it. It's the National Science Foundation. And this is the report that they have. So I would want to search for higher education in science and engineering. I would probably Google that. And that way I could see additional reports and additional data sets that they might offer. So I really use Statistical Abstracts as my way to get through all the mess of data that's out there and find who do I need to be getting my information from. So just like what you were saying, how do we vet some of these sources? This is how I vet them for the most part. I learn about who are quality data providers based off of who appears in here. And it's not just government sources. So if I do social media, I should be able to find other tables that will probably, and there it is, Pew Research Trust as one of them. But it helps give you a feel for when you're thinking about a topic, who produces that data for you. And then you can figure out what's the likelihood that I'm going to find the kind of data that I want from them. So that's really the reason why I use this tool sometimes. And I know that we've sort of hit our time here. I really didn't have a whole lot of other options for searching for data sources, but I wanted to show you what I do. Whenever first off, we do have 2 guides. We haven't created a statistics guide because it's such a mess sometimes trying to create those guides and keep them up to date. But I can show you for the econ department. They need a lot of data sets. This is a list that they've created in addition to things that I've found. So it's a very long list. This is why these kind of guides are just so overwhelming. Chris has created one that is for public speaking students. And it also shows statistic polls and fact checkers. So what are your major data sets that you might are data tools that you might use that are freely available on the web. And then what I like to do is, if I have a topic in mind, maybe I'm thinking I need television statistics. And I think I'm spelling this wrong. But I throw in, every other library creates these same kind of guides. They're technically under a company called LibGuide. And so I just look for other libraries who might have more staffing than we do. Try to find out if they own a LibGuide that's going to be helpful. And here at Drexel, they have one called Market plus Audience Research. And this gets me to a list of databases that maybe we have access to, maybe we don't. But at least you learn what it is that you can access and how to, what you're looking for, who's producing the data you need, and then we can talk about how we can access it. So that's what I had to share with you all today. Any questions? I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing, and I am going to stop the recording. Hold on just a second. Sometimes I can't find that. Oh, I just do it here. All right, bye people who are watching.